Hi all, and welcome to my channel, Fred Makes Things. And today we are doing the project review video for Sewers Club for February 2023. This is my third February of this box. It's kind of exciting. Last week you would have seen my project revisit for last year's project. I honestly just finished filming that. I'm filming this a little early, but I just finished this and I wanted to talk about it while it was fresh in my mind. So yeah, let's talk. What is Sewers Club? You might ask if you are new to my channel or new to my videos, or this is the first thing you've clicked on about Sewers Club. Who knows? Sewers Club is a monthly subscription box where you get everything you need to make one project. It comes in this lovely box here. It says Sewers Club on it. Normally this box is closed for you, but there is a lot of stuff and I didn't feel like shoving it all back in. You get everything that you need to make one project. That's the fabric, the pattern, batting, anything like that. Yeah, it all comes in the box. You also get bonus items. The bonus item is always matching thread for your project. And then sometimes you get some other goodies as well. Like sometimes they're notions or sewing aids or extra fabric or extra patterns or what have you. And for an additional around $10 a month, you also get an add-on notion. These are often things that are designed to help you with your project, but are not necessary for the completion of your project. And then sometimes they're just fun things that they throw in with you. As I'm working, I always put everything back into this box so that I can talk to you about this, what came in the box, if you happen to miss my unboxing video. My unboxing of these projects always go up, almost always go up about 2 weeks before this box. The first Wednesday of the month is often the unboxing video, and then 2 weeks after that, right, which would be today, the 15th, is my project review video. When I say the 15th, I mean the 22nd. I think it's the 22nd. Don't quote me on that. Whatever this Wednesday is. I'm filming this video on the 12th. That's why I'm a bit off. Anyways, so yeah, I'm going to break this video up into 4 parts. Part 1 is going to be discussing what came in the original box. Part 2 is walking through making the project, kind of discussing the steps as I go. Part 3 is pros, cons, and user error. And let me tell you, this month's is a doozy. And then part 4 are my final thoughts and sign off. Timestamps are on the screen for you and will be in the description box as well. So if you don't care about one of the things that I talk about, you can just skip it and move on to the next one. To see the project reveal, that always comes at the end of my assembling the project part 2. So yeah, let's talk part 1. What came in the box? This mess came in this box. We were making the roundabout zipper bag. So it's another round bag. Last month was a round bag. This month is a round bag. So we have the roundabout zipper bag. This is the little card that you always get. It tells you your colorway. I got the cream variation, kind of the fabrics that you could get, your foam, and then this also came with a zipper. The back always shows you your bonus items and then your add-on notions if you get that as well. Here are the instructions. We will keep that handy for the future. This month it came with a template that I traced out. That's this guy here. See why this is a bit of a mess? Here's the matching thread. It was 100% cotton. I already had this color from a previous box, so I used that and then a little bit of this. We have some leftover fabric as well, and some leftover foam. This is like a really thicker kind of crafting foam. So we have a couple of pieces of this. We have a third piece floating around as well, but I think my cat took it, so we'll see if it ever sees the light of day again. We have some scrap. We have a really large piece of this yellow bouncing ball fabric. Right, so I could like make an entire bag over again if I wanted to. With that, all right, we have more like scrap pieces from the template, more yellow scrap, a bit of this dog fabric. I love this dog fabric. And we have like a large, I should make this over again. And we have a large piece of this dog fabric as well. Quite a big piece. We got large pieces for this fabric. More little pieces of foam. Here was my bonus fat quarter that came in this month's box. Never touched it, but I have plans for this in the future. And then my bonus Notion add-on was this really cool double cap rivet tool. I didn't need to do any riveting in this project, so it kind of just hung out in the box for the duration of making this. So to give you a better look at the fabric, right here's the beautiful, it's a yellow bouncing tennis ball fabric with this really awesome dog fabric. I'm usually not a huge like what feels like a juvenile, like young kind of print person, but I really like this. I really like these fabrics together too. I think they're just really, really cool. So we'll let you look at that while we discuss part 2. Yeah, so that's what came in the box. So let's talk part 2, putting the project together. That's where the instructions come in. There were 17 instructions, 2 preparatory instructions, so not too terrible. There was some cutting involved, and definitely this was a project you needed to pay attention to the direction of the fabric, and they were very careful to say that in the project video, instructional video, and also here on the instructions. It really focuses on paying attention to direction. That will come into play a little later. So cutting was pretty straightforward. You only had 2 cuts of fabric A. Actually, let's talk steps, because pictures are going to start whizzing by for you. Whizzing by. I don't talk fast enough for pictures to whiz by. But as always, the first thing I did was I ironed out all of my fabric, made sure that all the creases and stuff were taken care of. Took a photo of it because I like taking pictures of the fabric together. Someday I'll do something with them. And then I went straight to cutting. I cut this out a couple of days before I made it, and that's because I cut it out the day that I started my lovely monthly visitor, and I had to wait a couple of days before I was feeling up to making this project. I say that because I learned a long time ago, but it's being reinforced over and over again, that when you are not feeling well and you are tired or like your head's just not in it, it's best to kind of stop what you are doing and come back when you're feeling better, because you will always mess up if you don't. And again, that will come into play a little later as well. But I cut all of this stuff out. It was pretty straightforward. Fabric A, so the dogs, I had to do 1 17 by 10 inch rectangle and 1 6 by 5 inch pocket. And that was it for like your main important fabric. Fabric B was a bit more. You needed 2 3 by 18 rectangles. That was for like what they call your gusset. basically like the structure of your bag, the side of your bag. You need to cut out a 12 by 12 inch square of binding, or to make binding strips. If you've seen any of my videos, you know how much I hate binding strips. I hate bias binding. I hate binding in general. You needed to cut out one 4 1/4 by an 11.5 inch rectangle for your handle. You needed to cut out a 1 by 5 inch rectangle for a pocket accent. And then you needed to cut out one of your body bag templates. And this is where you needed to pay attention to direction. So I copied this template, right? I wrote gusset fold line, center fold line, things like that. And then you want to make sure that your templates go up and down so that like when you open, you can't see my hands, so that when you open your bag, your fabric runs like up and down. So you want to make sure that your direction of your fabric is up and down, right? My bouncing balls, right, run, right, to me they run like this too directionally, right, because they bounce across this. So I made sure that my folds were like that, right, so that when I opened the bag you would see the bouncing balls. Same thing with the dogs. When you reach that step, up and down like this, right, you want your curve in the direction, or we should say you want all of your straight edges to be in the direction of your pattern, right? So that when you look at your bag, your dogs are facing the right direction. If you cut it out sideways, then when you look at your bag, right, your dogs are all going to be sideways. I'll show you what I mean more when we look at the bag at the end. So right now you're only using your template once, but you will use it again. But only now you're just cutting out the template for your lining fabric. You'll do the template for your exterior fabric in a minute. Yeah, so then you also had to cut out your foam. You needed 3 pieces. You needed a 17 by 10 inch rectangle for your exterior body, right? That matches your dog fabric. Then you needed a 3 by 18 inch rectangle. This was for your body on this side, your gusset. And then you needed a 3 1/4 inch by 10 inch rectangle, and this was for your handle. Instead of cutting a fresh piece for this, I kind of dove into my leftover foam and fusible batting and interfacing and whatnot stash, and I just pulled out a piece of leftover foam that was about the right size. I cut it down a little bit and then I used that instead of cutting any of my fresh foam. Even though they're small pieces of foam, sometimes they come in handy for other projects. So I decided to keep that. And then that was it for cutting. Next, it was fusing. This was pretty straightforward. You basically fused your 3 by 18 inch piece to one of your gusset pieces for your body of the bag. And then you took your 11 by 18, fused that to your 11 by 18 piece of foam, right? And that was for like the exterior body of your bag, they call it, right? But like your top and bottom. And then they had you quilt. And for the first time in a very long time, I took my time with my quilting. I know, crazy. But what I did, as you can see in the photo, is that I measured 2 inch, I don't know what I did. Oh, I did like a 2 inch by 2 inch diagonal on the bouncing ball yellow fabric, and did like large squares like that. So my quilted is like a really cool single large square repeated, as you can see in the photo. I think that turned out really, really well. I really, really liked it. And then for the dog fabric, I did a large diamond shape, an inch and, I think it's in there, 1.5 inches apart. They might be 2 inches apart. I don't remember. I think they're 1.5 inches apart from each other. And what I did is I took my large straight ruler, went from the top one side, right? Crossed down diagonally to the corner of the other side, did a long straight line, and then instead of like using my little quilting guide on my sewing machine, I actually drew out all of the lines, I think in an inch and a half or 2 inches apart from each other, and that made these perfect diamond shapes. There was no kind of like getting off track or anything. So I think this quilting is some of my best quilting I have ever done, and I'm very, very proud of it. That was a long way to describe me quilting something, but again, if you've been on my channel any amount of time, you will know that there are 3 things that I really don't like with sewing. First and foremost is using binding on large pieces. I hate it. I hate binding on large pieces. Second, I hate quilting. I know that the finished product usually looks really nice with it, but I just hate the amount of work it takes to quilt something. How it's not a lot of effort, it's just a lot of time, and I hate it. And the third thing that I hate, which is not part of this, is piecing fiddly pieces together to make a large pattern work. I've gotten better at this, but I hate it. Those are the 3 things I hate most about sewing. And 2 of them are in this project, so that's fun. Anyway, off topic. Once everything was quilted, then they had you use your template and cut out your dogs. Remember, making sure that your dogs run in the proper direction so that your bag looks nice when it's all nice and finished. And then it was just basically assembly, lots and lots of assembly. It's a 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout, which is pretty standard. But yeah, what was nice is that they gave you like a pull apart zipper, like a zipper by the yard or a zipper by the meter. And I think it really, really helped with this project. So first thing they had to do, pull your zipper apart and attach your attach one side to your 18 by 3 inch yellow gusset, right, your bouncing ball fabric. And then they basically had you attach to your foam side, and then they had you sandwich it in with your interior side, right? So the other piece of fabric, making sure that, again, your directions run the same way so that your bouncing balls point in the same direction on both the outside and the inside. They had you sew your 2 pieces together, and then they had you flip it around. Editing Fred here to do a hopefully quicker voiceover than the rambling mess that the middle of this video was as I'm editing it. So I'm just going to pick up from talking about the gusset and then end at some point down the road, and then we'll see if I have to come back or not. So yeah, once my zipper was sandwiched in between my gusset, they had you open everything up, press it down, and then run a top stitch along the zipper side just to finish it off, right? Make everything nice and clean. Then the video instructions suggested that you also do a basting stitch along the bottom. This was so that you can keep everything nice and in line when you were sewing it onto the body pieces in a future step. So I did that as well. Then I turned my attention to the handle, and as in standard Sewers Club handle strap kind of fashion, they had you take your narrower side of your fabric, your 4-inch side, fold it in half with the wrong sides facing, pressing a crease down the center so that you know where your center line is. Open it up, fold your 2 raw edges into that center crease, ironing it again so that
by the time you were done, your 4 inches turned into 1 inch. This usually creates like a nice sturdy strap on its own, but for this project, they also had you stick that narrower piece of foam that you cut in the beginning right into the middle of all of the piles. This will create like a really fun, really sturdy looking handle. So you did that. You had your foam sitting on the interior of one of your folds. Then you ran a closing stitch on one side. You matched it with a top stitch on the other side, and your handle was basically finished. From there, they then had you turn your attention to your little pocket for the inside, again paying attention to your fabric direction. I paid close attention with the dogs, less attention with the little accent piece because it's only 1 inch, and there wasn't enough of the strip to show to really make direction matter. But they had you attach your 1 inch to your one side of the, I want to say 6 inch side, right? Because it was a 5 inch piece, it was a 1 inch by 5 inch piece of fabric attaching to a 6 by 5 inch piece of fabric. So you wanted your 5 inch pieces to match. So you sewed it on one side, and then you took the other raw edge on your other side of your fabric, sewed it to the other side of your pocket. So you kind of made yourself a tunnel. You pressed that down, making sure everything was nice and clean and tidy. And then this gave you just like a little 1 inch accent on the top of your pocket. Then you completely sealed in one side of your pocket. And then on the other side, you left like a little 1.5 inch hole so that you could right side everything out. Iron it nice and flat. Run a top stitch along the top to make everything nice and clean, and then your pocket was finished. From there, we then moved on to adding the pocket to the interior fabric and your handle to your exterior fabric. Before you did that, you had to measure out your gussets from your template. You had that gusset line on your template, so you just did that on the interior fabric, and you also did that on the exterior fabric, so you ended up having one center line and then 2 gusset lines on each side, and then you started to focus in on your pocket and your handle. For your pocket, they wanted you to make sure, paying attention to direction, that you sewed your pocket on the right side. Right, you want your bouncing balls to be in the same direction as your dogs are facing, so that when you open it up, your pocket is on the top. We'll talk about that in user error when we get down to there. And then with your handle, they just had you center your handle onto your center line on your exterior fabric, just sewing down your raw edges to the raw edges of your bag. It makes it for a really like puffy handle, and how to combat some of that was they also had you run a ballot box 3/4 of an inch in. They want you to do a 3/4 of an inch sized ballot box, 3/4 starting, 3/4 of an inch in from each side. If you don't know what a ballot box is, the photo should give you an idea, but basically you're making a rectangle using your lines that you made when you were making the handle, right? Your 2 sewn lines already as your 2 sides, and then you made a rectangle out of that, and then you ran an X right from one side diagonally across to the other side, and then this makes for like a really sturdy handle, like a really nice finished handle. I'm sure the photo is kind of showing you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to end my voiceover here, hopefully. I may end up picking it up again in a minute, so let's just see.
Then they also wanted you to run 2 top stitches down your gusset line on your exterior. This was to help create stability in the bag. Now your top is done and your interior is done. So now it's time to move on to making your bias tape, your binding tape. Bias binding tape, it's not tape. Your bias binding, I think. What they did is you had you go to your 12 by 12 inch square, cut it diagonally from corner to corner, match those up so that match those together so that your pattern runs in, again, in the same direction with your long sides together. This makes for a I can't remember, a parallelogram maybe. I'll look up the right word, but basically you have your top and bottom running parallel together, and then your sides are running at a 45-degree angle. Again, the photo should help. Then they had you measure 1.5 inches across and start cutting long strips. When you're done, you will have 4 long strips. They have you attach those together, right sides pointing to each other, offset a bit, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So what did all of that babbling really mean? So here's one of the leftover strips. It wasn't included in the box because I forgot. Here is one of the original, wait, which one? Here is one of the original attachments, right? Here's another one. So basically, what they have you do is that you can see that this has like some give to it, right? You can see how I can pull it. Fabric normally doesn't do that, right? You're cutting it on the bias to give it some of that stretch. Like on this way, you can see like on this piece of yellow fabric, when you pull, you don't get as much of a stretch from it, but when you have it cut on the bias, you get more stretch. So what they have you do is when you've cut all of your what did they say, 1.5 inch strips, they have you attach. And what they do is you have right sides together, folded over at a 90-degree angle, right? You see how these guys are at a 90-degree angle, right? And that's because these have to line up perfectly, right? You want to make sure your direction is running the same. So you can see, right, the bouncing balls are all running this way, right? So you have them like this, right? You have these 2 strips at a 45-degree angle, and then you have this strip here, right? These will match, and then you will want a 1/4 inch roughly on each side of the strip. You see how I have like this little dangling triangle here? You'd have one dangling triangle on this side, you'd have the same dangling triangle on that side. You sew it together, and then when you open it up, they come out straight. If you don't make sure, that's a really good one. If you don't make sure that you have them lined up properly, you can see on this side how they're not perfectly aligned, right? They're kind of off by like in metric, that's about 1 millimeter off of each other. This one, I took more time and it's lined up perfectly. See that? So this side's perfect. This side is off by about 1 millimeter. I don't think it matters a lot in the long run, but you want to get as close to this side as possible. So that's why you need them offset. I wonder if this shows you. Yeah, see it offset about a 1/4 inch on each side. Yeah, see, 1/4 inch. And then it comes together nicely. I trimmed one side, I didn't trim the other. Okay, so that's how you make your binding. I hate making this stuff. I hate using this stuff. Once your binding is made, they want you to run it across all the way around your interior piece. You start on one side, you leave about a 2 inch tail that you don't sew down all the way around, and when you reach the other side, they in the instructions and in the tutorial will go through how they want you to finish it. I'm going to let them tell you how to finish it rather than how I explain it, because I don't quite understand, and again I messed it up in this one. but they have you finish it off, trim all of your excess pieces, and then make sure that your binding is down, flat, so you don't mess up any of your further steps. They also have you run it like closer than 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that as things kind of start to bulk up, it doesn't kind of get in the way of your other stuff that you're doing. Now in this step, I should have pinned all of this down to keep it out of the way. I didn't, and that will cause me issues going forward. But once your binding is attached, you're starting to near the end. So your binding is all the way around your top. Then they have you attach your zipper to the top side of your exterior fabric. This is pretty straightforward. They have you start 1/4 inch in from your gusset line on the top, sew around to 1/4 inch in from your gusset line on the other side, and then trim any excess zipper that you might have. And then they have you focus on your attaching your gusset to the bottom. They have you attach your zipper, because you already have your one end of the zipper attached to your gusset. Now you have the other side of your zipper attached to your top. They have you put the zipper together, line everything up, and then trim off any excess. Again, you want everything to land about 1/4 inch below your gusset line. This makes everything nice and clean for the next steps. So it's a step you cannot skip. You want to make sure everything matches. So they have you kind of mark where things need to be trimmed. You take it off of, or you pull your zipper apart again. You trim what needs to be trimmed. Then I went in, double checked, made sure everything still fit properly. It did. And so then I moved on to my next step. The next step is attaching your gusset to your to the opposite side of your exterior. Wait. Yeah, I guess they have you attach the gusset to the opposite side of your exterior piece, right? So that your zipper's on the top, your gusset's basically on the bottom. Then again, make sure that everything lines up properly. Then you're going to put your zipper in, attach everything together, baste down your two gusset side or your two sides, right? And this makes the body of the bag. Making sure that all of your seams are connected, everything is good, right? That basically all you have left to do is your finishing, which is sealing everything together, cleaning up all the raw edges with your binding. I didn't take photos of these last couple of things because I wanted you to see the bag in its finished form. So once your binding is done, they walk you through how to finish your binding on the instructions as well. I'm going to let you kind of check that out too, but basically it's just folding your binding over, hiding your raw edge, and sewing. When you reach your corners, it's a little tricky. They say keep your needle in, lift your foot, turn the bag, right, with your needle anchoring everything together, and then you can continue sewing. Pretty standard if you're used to doing flat corners or any corners. A little bit more complicated with the amount of layers and that foam. But in the end, it kind of came together. And that was the final step. Turn your bag right side out, fluff it a bit, and it's finished. So now for the part I'm guessing you've been waiting for, the bag. Move the fabric out of the way. Here is the bag. Here's the top. Everything's kind of pinched at the moment. I finished this like yesterday. I barely haven't trimmed all of my things that needed trimming yet. My trimming scissors. Anyway, here's the bag. I'll probably trim as I talk, as I always do. One of the things that they said to do when you're finishing your binding is to like hand baste your binding down. And I didn't do that, and I should have. Anyway, so here's your top, right, with the beautiful quilting. Here's your bottom with that beautiful quilting. Here are your seams. I haven't ironed it yet, so you can see this is where I sewed. There's where my gusset line is supposed to be. Here's my exterior center line, so that matches up. Here's your other line, and right where your gusset's supposed to be, where I sewed the top stitch. Pretty close. And I like how they all intersect the diamond. Not this wide's a little off. It should have been intersecting, but I don't know. I got a little off. Here's your side, right, with that really beautiful big diamond shaping. Right, your zipper opens and closes nicely. Here's your handle. I don't know how it got wonky. I'm going to try to iron it and make it flat again or sit nicer. Also, if I'd done this again, I would make sure that this points down. But that. And now your interior, and this is where you're going to see some problems. So my direction faces the right way, but I sewed my dog thing on the wrong side. Actually, my direction is upside down. That's the problem. I sewed it in upside down. My pocket should be here. It should be facing up. It's not. When you hold the bag down, my pocket's gonna drop anything that happens to be inside of it. I doubt there will be anything inside of it, but yep, that's my mistake. Here's my binding. As you can see, it's a mess, especially this corner here. So I'm terrible at binding. I think I'm getting better, but I need more patience. And I need to remember the thing I told myself in July when I made the July spec. Sorry, I have like the hiccups. Here's my pocket. It faces the right way, but I should have folded this inside out and cleaned this up first, because now it looks a little wonky. And if I had just ironed it a little bit nicer and flattened it a little bit more before running a top stitch along the top, this could look a lot nicer. So yeah, that's the project. So let's talk pros, cons, and user error. Pro. I like this bag. I like the shape of this bag. I like the colors of this bag. I keep talking about how I keep seeing yellow everywhere. Here's some more yellow. It's a really great, like almost primary yellow too. It's really quite cool. Like as I'm looking at some Lego that I have next to me, it's basically the same color. It's a little deeper. But yeah, it's a really great shape. I really like the shape of the bag. I'm a big fan of rounded bags in general. I always think they're really, really cool. I like the depth. I like the size. Like I said, I really like the dogs, and I really like how this kind of came together and all of the steps for it. I think the pocket inside is a little too small and a little useless, but I like the idea of the pocket, and I'm pretty sure you could kind of like make this fit the shape or like you can upsize it or downsize it as you see fit. So I think that it's quite versatile in that way. I really like how wide open the zipper is. I even like where the handle is located. Cons. I think the handle's too big. I would have probably, I thought that I had maybe not cut it down the right size, because like I said, I was cutting this when I wasn't feeling great. But I think that if I had just, like, if it was just like, I don't know, an inch shorter, right? I don't like how it pokes up so much. Like I said, I'm going to iron it and try to get it to sit like nicer. But it kind of just bothers me with how massive this handle is. I feel like it's just way too big. I like the ballot boxes though. The other thing is I hate the binding. Someday I will get better at it. Someday I will understand more about it, but I don't like it at all. And I have one in my user error. I have one thing I might do differently about it. The other thing is I'm beginning to think that I don't like this foam. It's Bosal R something or other. What's it called? Bosal, B-O-S-A-L, NR Form Single-Sided Fusible Foam Stabilizer. I don't think I like it. And I've come to this conclusion because the first time that I had it was in the summer, last July's swimmer's bag. That didn't turn out very well for me. The alternative pattern did, but that initial bag didn't, and it was round too. Then I saw it again in September's little like secret pocket pouch thing. I liked the idea of the project, but I didn't like the project, and I wonder if it was because of the foam. Then the third time I saw, this is why I'm getting to like why I think I don't like it. The third time I came across this foam was in December for December's project, right, which was that wine bag, the tuxedo wine bag. It worked better because there was no curves or anything that I had to deal with, but I didn't like the finishing on that bag. And again, I think it's the foam. I'm beginning to think that the foam creates a lot of bulk in the seams, and I don't like it. And that is my main complaint for this bag. Like, the handle might be better if I can get it to sit better, but I just don't know if I like this foam. I'm tempted to remake this bag by using like a double layer of fusible fleece or something instead, just to see if it makes it easier to work with. I had to trim out like a lot of foam from this side to make it work. This side was pretty easy because there was no foam. It was just covering the zipper, but there's like foam right? It was foam here attaching to foam here, and that made for a really bulky seam. And I had to cut a lot of that seam out just to reduce the bulkiness to get the binding to wrap around it. And I don't really like that at all. So that's my biggest con, is I don't know if I like that foam. If you've worked with this foam in the past, let me know if there's any tricks or something to making it like less bulky, to make it go through your sewing machine better. And then again, you're working with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and when you're talking about 2 pieces of foam, like, this is how thick the 2 pieces, like, here's a single thickness, right? I don't know if you can see that. Here's a single thickness of foam, right? When you fold it in half, right, that's doubling that thickness. That's quite... Okay. So a single thickness is... Yeah, I will not be able to read that in inches. conversions will be on the screen for you. For 4 millimeters is the thickness of one. So when you put it together, right, that's going to make 8 millimeters together, right? Yeah, about 8 millimeters together. And then when you add in like a double layer of fabric on top of it, like that's quite thick, right? Like I know that this fabric adds really nothing, but that's just a lot to get my sewing machine to go through. And then 1/4 of an inch seam allowance means that you're sewing like right along here. Like look at how much like that puckers out and stuff. Like that's just like a lot to pinch in. So I wonder that if you're gonna do a double foam, if maybe you should do like 1/2 an inch seam allowance, right? And then trim your excess so that you're not fighting all of that bulk. Anyway, that is my biggest complaint. Like, look how much bulk that is on my sewing machine. Maybe I need to use a different needle. I don't know. I just don't like it. So yeah, let's get to user error, because that was a really long complaint. And as always, this video is going to be so long. It takes so long to edit. User error. Well, 1, I should have sewn this facing the other direction. 2, even though I focused so heavily and was so proud of myself for making sure my directions matched, I sewed my dog in the wrong side and now his pocket faces down. And I don't really like how I've managed to finish this little accent piece. I should have been a bit more patient with it. And then of course, all of my issues with my binding. The other thing that I think, especially if you're new to binding, is that instead of cutting this at 1.5 inches, cut it at like 2 inches. You have a lot of extra binding. And because you have so much extra fabric, if you need to go in and make more binding, it's not going to be that hard because you have so much extra fabric. Or just start bigger. Instead of doing a 12 by 12 square, do like a 14 by 14 inch square or something like that, just to give yourself some wiggle room. Because what happened is that I sewed, like, you can see how messed up this side is. Actually, this side is worse. So I sewed, yeah, that's just the join that's bad. So I sewed this on. And the first thing I didn't do was fold everything in so that when I was, like my zipper especially, when I was doing that, I ended up catching this and having to tear it open a couple of times before I just finally pinned everything down. So I kept catching my binding into my zipper and into my gusset when I was sewing, and I had to rip it out, do it a few times. So make sure to pin everything down. It would have made my life a lot easier. Number 2, find out or figure out or remember where these lines are, right? Because this is a very stable piece, and try not to do your join right on the gusset. I didn't mean to do that. I should have done it somewhere in here, and that would have made finishing it a lot easier, but somehow it ended right up on a corner, right up on a gusset. No idea how I managed to pull that one off. And then number 3 is, like I said, if you're new to binding, make your binding strips wider, because like I said, there's so much bulk in here that I had a really hard time wrapping everything around. It got really messy up in here, and I ended up tearing it all out. I tore my binding to hell, basically. It was so bad that I ended up cutting all of my binding, cleaning it up, and then sewing another binding strip over so that I could wrap everything down and make it nice and clean. So this side of my binding is quite clean because I have so much extra binding to mess with. But as you can see, like this is where some of it ripped. This is where all of the joining came in on it, so it's a mess, right? So both of my corners are a mess. So if you're new, just because it doesn't hurt to do like a couple of extra folds to make everything nice and clean if you have to. But do that. The other thing they suggested doing was basting it down by hand. I used the basting tape that I got in last month's box, thinking that would do, but because my binding was so thin and finicky, it didn't work for me, and it made it an even worse mess when I was trying to like pick it all out of here. So really, like, I highly recommend doing a larger binding strip, and then you just have a little extra to fold in, and hand basting it or something, tacking it down in some way, so that or even just hand stitching it all together, like plop down in front of the TV and just stitch it all in by hand. Maybe that would have made for a cleaner finished edge, but it's not very clean, and it really bothers me. Like, that's the biggest issue I have, is that my binding is not clean. And any time I've had to do bias binding like this, it's always like this. It's never very clean, and I always hate it. And then my fourth thing to just recommend, right, of user error, is that when I was starting to work on the binding, I was really kind of tired and I was really over it. And what I should have done is just stopped and come back to it the next day. I didn't actually finish this yesterday. I finished this on Friday. Today's the 12th that I'm filming. I should have just been patient, taken the night off, and come back to it with fresh eyes the next day. Like, the moment that I saw that there was going to be issues, I should have stopped and come back to it. And then maybe some of this wouldn't have been so hard. I don't hold it really against Sewers Club for the binding. I'm guessing if you're far more practiced at it than I am, it would be a lot easier. But I am, in some regards, still very new to sewing. And this is just something that I'm constantly struggling with. My flat binding is getting better. And small pieces of binding for like the little toiletry bags and stuff, that is getting better. But in general, like larger projects with bias binding and this foam is just, oh, it's so difficult. So let's just jump right into final thoughts and user, or I just talked about user error. Final thoughts and sign off. So, like I said, I like the idea of this bag. I like most aspects of this bag. I like the shape. I think it's interesting that I had a round bag last month. I have a round bag this month. I had a tiger last month. I have dogs this month. I'm wondering if this year we're going to start having lots of animal themed things. That would be kind of cool. One thing that I was kind of surprised at is that I have like a really simple zipper pull. It's cute, but the photo and even the tutorial online shows a little heart. I should ask my mother-in-law what hers is. She could tell me. She got this blue, by the way. Hers turned out pretty cool, or her fabric is pretty cool. I don't know when she's gonna make it, but anyway, so that's kind of sad. I would have liked to have had the heart, but yeah, I like most aspects of this bag. If I were to remake it, revisit it, I would probably skip the foam and do fusible fleece, especially at least for this exterior part. I might continue with foam on the side just to give it like the really nice rigidity, the stability, but I think maybe I would swap out fusible fleece for this. Just to make maybe binding everything easier. And like I said, I would also do a wider binding strip so that I didn't have such a hard time with it, and bite the bullet and just hand stitch it in. But overall, I really enjoy this bag. I really like having it. I could imagine some uses for it. They're like, oh, keep your leash or whatever in it, but I don't have a leash because I don't have a dog. But I do have a cat and she likes to go outside, so maybe we'll keep her harness and her leash in there, because right, we won't let her free roam. We take her outside. She tends to like chew on grass, throw up, and then we bring her inside. But that's probably what this is going to be for mostly, but we will see. And with that, I'm going to probably go, because I know this video is very long and I still have to edit it, and that always takes long too. So if you want to see more sewing content, think about subscribing. I do sewing stuff every single Wednesday. The first Wednesday of the month is the Sewers Club unboxing. Third Wednesday-ish of the month is project review. And then I have other things on the other Wednesdays. Mondays are miscellaneous unboxings and whatnot, and Fridays are a long-term time-lapse kind of relaxing style video. Maybe think about liking the video if you've made it this far, right? We're at the end, so you had to have sat here and enjoyed something out of this video. So maybe like it, let me know you enjoy it. Also, anything that you have to say or comment, tips, tricks, suggestions are always welcome in the comment section below. I really do enjoy hearing other people's experiences or seeing things that they can recommend that I can try out in the future. To help me, to help whoever's reading the comments, all that good stuff. So yeah, comment. And I think that's it. So with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk with you again soon. Bye!